Welcome to the Free Speech Nation podcast with me, Andrew Doyle. My guest today is the political YouTuber Mahyar Tousi. We spoke about a lot of things during the course of our conversation, including nationalism, Mahyar's origins in Iran, left versus right, the ongoing culture wars, and much, much more. I hope you enjoy it as much as I do. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks very much.
Let's start with your background. How is it you got involved doing what you do?
Well, it was a bit of a luck. I always tell people, obviously, started the YouTube channel, a political YouTube channel is nothing that you can plan. And so a lot of kids these days say, I want to be an influencer, I want to be a YouTuber or an Instagrammer. Don't aim for it. If you don't have a plan, don't just do it for the sake of it. I did it because there was a gap in the market at the time a few years ago when Brexit happened and the Brexit negotiation was going on, and the legacy mainstream media, your BBCs and Skies and all those guys, were not really reporting what people wanted to actually hear. So I started talking about those sort of things, and that's why it got big.
I mean, that's interesting, isn't it? At the time of the Brexit vote, there were definitely gaps emerging because I think that was probably the first time that it became really, really obvious that the media had a partisan slant, overwhelmingly so.
Yeah.
And I don't think they could even see it, could they?
No. And a lot of people who criticize the whole of the establishment, generally speaking, the environment, that they talk about them as if they have some sort of like a secret meeting to plot. They don't even know. Most of the time, there are some, of course, moments where it is kind of like planned bias, something like that. But most of the time, it's so hardwired for years and decades that we've been used to what we've been fed. So they kept doing it and no one complained.
So was it just the case that you created a YouTube product that there was a market for? Or is it that you had to do other things to sort of get it out there? Because I think a lot of people who want to start their own YouTube commentary channel or anything like that, or podcast or whatever it might be, they do struggle. They think, how can I break through? How can it get a wide reach? How did you do it?
Yeah, I mean, again, it's quite different to those who start podcasts or anything like that, or a channel, because they want to actually use that as a product, because that's actually very difficult to do. I just got lucky because I didn't even have to try to do that, because I still had a normal job, 9-to-5 job, and this was a hobby. And YouTube as a whole is a good system that, when it works, that it's just a search engine. So it did the promo for me. But the product I was selling, which was the Brexit negotiations for a lot of normal people who just didn't want to listen to boring stuff on BBC, it was already working. So luckily, I didn't need to kind of go do any ads or anything like that.
Which means you're probably not best placed to give people advice, actually.
No, don't ask advice about how to do YouTube from me.
Okay.
It's quite tricky, but yeah.
What about your background? So where did you grow up? What was your education like? What sort of thing did you do?
Yeah, so my background's Persian. So my parents were from Iran. My mother was a political refugee and a proper one, and not like an illegal economic migrant. I always have to clarify. I get defensive about that. No, actually, my mum does, but not me. I was born in Tehran, in the capital, relative kind of middle class, kind of ordinary background, and came here as a kid. It was a bit of a culture shock because we grew up in a council estate in Lewisham, southeast London. So it got a culture shock the other way around.
Oh, I see. So you'd come from relative affluence to somewhere that wasn't. Okay.
Yeah. So that was kind of, I grew up in London and went to university, got involved in politics, and initially started working in Parliament. Then I realized I don't want to work in politics. So I started getting like normal jobs, but I was still involved in politics. I was very interested in all that stuff because of my background. If you're born and grew up in countries like Iran or Russia, these places where it's kind of like, it's not complete North Korea style dictatorship. It's kind of like a gray area sort of thing. It's authoritarianism. You have to by default be in touch with current affairs and everything else. Even as a kid, my dad was basically like showing me all the like newspapers and everything else. So I was already kind of in touch with everything. So automatically when I got here, I got interested in politics, and now obviously what I do.
But when you were born, of course, the new regime in Iran was established. And how much did you know about life before the revolution?
Well, at that point, anything we were taught was by the regime,
Quite.
The post-revolutionary.
So, so it had a slant, right?
It was quite tricky because they have obviously a lot of like propaganda stuff. One of them is they have this anniversary of the revolution every year, and when you're a school kid, you have to actually do. It's kind of mandated, but not in a sense that if you don't do, you go to prison. But it's more like it's become a cultural tradition that kids, it's like Halloween. Yes. You kind of like decorate the kind of the classroom and all that. So by default, everything you see on TV and classrooms and history books is about how the Shah of Iran was a degenerate, kind of a greedy, It kind of paints me like a Bond villain, like
Okay, a caricature.
So with like a cat and everything. So
did they actually give him a cat?
Yeah. In history books, yeah, they had a cat. Well, he didn't have a cat. It was a bit weird. But as people grew up, well, my generation especially, there was the beginning of the rise of obviously social media. I was already here, but in Iran, the people I knew towards like 2009, when this is like the age of like Facebook and Twitter. And the green movement happened, the kind of almost revolution happened in Iran, but this was our generation.
Yeah.
The kids who were brainwashed until now, and now they have access to information from the West and the whole world.
Yes.
So they decided to be like, oh, the Shah wasn't the person we were told. America was not, what we were told about. The capitalism, democracies, and all that. So it's actually because of the exports of Western values, which is basically the innovation that we have, the access to information, the internet, and everything else. We are already influencing those places without, having kind of boots on the ground.
Which I suppose is why certain countries will try and prohibit the use of the internet.
Exactly. So technically, from their perspective, you can't blame them because they want to shut down the access to information. You don't need to do it in Iraq anymore. You don't need to do it in Afghanistan anymore. And that's why people like Putin are freaking out and they are, again, from their perspective, they're saying, well, it's justified when we criticize America and the West and NATO being the kind of the dark side, the kind of the Bond villains, because that's what we are doing. We're not planned. We are basically influencing their culture, but we're not doing it for any purpose. We're just doing it.
So how old were you when you left Iran?
I was old enough, 13, 14.
Okay, so you've actually experienced that, the impact of that kind of propaganda.
Oh, God, yeah.
So I'm just interested in, to what extent, or was there a moment where you could start to see through it, or to, in the way that a young child one day will say, hang on a minute, is Santa Claus real? You keep telling me about this Santa Claus, but I don't see evidence, and then it clicks.
I don't think it was a moment. I think it was, by default, that generation, the way they push. It's the same with any generation that you kind of rebel against the previous generation.
Okay.
So some people think you're rebelling against your parents. It's not even that. So right now, for example, Generation Z, Zoomers, are rebelling against millennials.
Yes.
So they're becoming less woke in some areas.
Yeah.
But for example, with that, when I grew up there, the way they were pushing Islam as a religion, but they weren't even selling it as a religion. They were selling it as a way of life and political kind of power, governmental kind of power sort of thing. This is just how we live.
Yes.
They unintentionally turned the majority of my generation in Iran towards becoming either atheists or convert to Christianity.
Really?
So from day one, Lebanon was like kids. When we were kids, we were not taking it seriously. We were like sitting in the back of the classroom, just heckling, and then they were talking about this sort of thing. So, and we go into a lot of trouble.
I'm sure you did, but I mean, this is a theocracy. This is a place where it has a state religion.
Yes.
That is very much tied into the way in which the country runs. I mean, we have a state religion here, but it's not so much tied in.
It's not pushed like that, though. Yeah.
So, I mean, that's interesting that you're saying that it wasn't just you. There were lots of people, young people, who just sort of instinctively rebelled against this stuff.
This is where both the current Iranian regime, compared to those days, and some other kind of grey area authoritarian regimes like Putin and Kremlin until basically now, what they've learned is don't go full on North Korea or right now in Shanghai in China, because don't push the buttons too much. Right now in Iran, they're not doing what they were doing like when they were doing it to me and my kind of friends.
Yes.
They're doing it kind of less so, because when they were doing it, pushing authoritarian theocracy, they turn everybody into atheism. They banned Western music, so everybody already had kind of black market, kind of fake,
like bootleg type
these
stuff.
sort of, So you can't completely ban things. It's the same with free speech. It's the same with anything else, or syntaxes. If you want to go too far, people will find a way to do sin.
Yes.
So, they ban nightclubs. People started having their basements as an illegal nightclub. So now they're doing it kind of semi-authoritarian. So they kind of turn a blind eye, so that they allow you to have an illusion of freedom. And it kind of works, which is dangerous, because right now there's a lot of complacency in Iran. Same generation that, my generation that were kicking off at the time, they're now fine. They're saying, we don't have any energy now to do revolution. Because they think
they've got enough.
They got enough freedom. They're like, we could do whatever we want now.
So are you saying that there is a kind of human instinct to just push back? If you're told you can't have something, you'll want something.
Absolutely. It's the same with this debate about free speech in the West, that especially over the last like 5 years.
Yeah.
They're more the authoritarian side, the cultural kind of establishment side of it, but there is the big tech or media or the political systems that pushed too extremely against the so-called hate speech.
Yeah.
That's where you had the kind of provoking aspects of, we're just going to do hate speech for banter.
Yes.
Not because a lot of people on the so-called right of the political spectrum are like bad people or rude or they want to say like this or that. It's just because they felt suffocated. So they're like, just for the sake of it, I'm going on Twitter and say this.
Of course.
And so you have to kind of don't go too far. And that's why I'm hoping that with this Elon Musk thing, with the Twitter now buying it, platforms like Twitter could actually do that to kind of pull back a bit.
Yeah.
You could still have your regulations, you could still have your kind of guidelines, but don't push too much.
I think, well, let's come on to Elon Musk in a moment, because I am fascinated by that story. But I just want to ask, just to bring it back to your upbringing, do you think that your experiences in Iran as a young person informed the way that you approach politics in this country?
Interesting question. Probably to an extent. Mainly, for example, by default, when I came here and as I grew up like in late teens, and I was thinking about politics and political ideology, before knowing that I'm, well, right-wing or kind of conservative, small c conservative, I knew that I had the values by default of free speech, democracy, free market capitalism, specifically free market capitalism, because then I realized because of my upbringing,
right,
we didn't have it. And so that's why I was shocked when I came here and grew up in a kind of southeast London, sort of like a working class area. But for me and my mum, we were still so like happy and excited and kind of grateful. But all we were hearing was complaints and people saying, this is the end of the world, it's the worst country in the world, we're going to die. I was like, no, I can show you the actual rock bottom.
Yes.
And it will be like Turkey to Iran or any other place that if you are born in a certain class or kind of background, then you will get stuck. So in terms of my political ideology or my values, the reason I now do what I do on YouTube and everything else to push for the protection of freedom, individual liberties, because if we get complacent to a tiny little bit, then you will accidentally turn Britain into another Iran. Not in an exaggerated way, not a complete in that sense, but you will accidentally kind of walk towards that.
So is it just the complacency that comes about when a culture starts taking freedoms for granted? I mean, I hear Rita Panahi, for instance, in Australia, often talking about, the society in Australia today. People just don't realise what it's like to grow up in an actual authoritarian regime, and so it's very easy for us. I mean, who was that radio presenter the other day who was going on about how England's just a grotty, racist little country?
On LBC, yes.
On LBC, and you just think, that suggests to me you just haven't travelled very much.
It's a problem that specifically for cultures like here and Western Europe, and especially cultures that came from kind of had monarchies or have monarchies, because two different kind of cultures don't have it. One is your Irans and Russias, where they know their elections are rigged, but they still go and queue for hours. It's fascinating how there are real queues.
Yeah.
Well, not the current, if they have an election right now in Putin, for Putin it's not going to be the same, but in the past, if there's an election in Iran or Russia or these places, people still go and queue because they still feel involved, because, for them, even though they know it's kind of, they have a feeling it's rigged.
Yeah.
They still feel, they appreciate the concept that we're going to go and vote. We become complacent here compared to then the other side, your revolutionary countries, your Frances and your Americas. They actually still appreciate. They don't go complacent. So yeah, you might talk about your Californias and Silicon Valleys, but you still also have Florida. You still have your Texases. Those places, they're still fine. They're not going to go fully complacent. France, despite all the issues, and it's still a democratically elected government. Macron could go authoritarian with domestic policies, but it's unlikely that France will go accidentally by complacency towards the next Hitler.
But even if it's not I mean, this gets raised again and again, this slippery slope argument. I make arguments in favour of free speech, and people say, "Oh, so you think we're freewheeling towards the gulags or that kind of site?" And I'm not saying that.
No.
I'm saying that this is a kind of inchmeal degeneration of liberty that can happen.
Yes,
and it doesn't have to have that terminus of complete authoritarian catastrophe.
Yes.
It can be bad enough if the freedoms are eroded at all.
Exactly. I mean, look at what a few years ago they started the governments, basically the centre left and centre right both agreed to do certain taxes like sugar tax or like the plastic bags and things like that. If you at the time stand up and complain, you'll be the nutter, because people say it's an okay policy. It's just one policy.
Yeah.
And it's good intentions. And Milton Friedman always said, don't judge a policy or program based on its intentions, judge it based on its outcome.
Yeah.
But people always judge it by its intention, and we say, but we're complaining because it's not about this policy, it's about you're going to continue. You're going to set a bad precedent. And they say, no, trust us, it's going to be fine. And now they're going after pizza toppings and size of pizzas and things like that. It's the same with free speech. One word will be banned. And then next thing, any opinion will be banned.
Well, I think it's less that one thing directly leads to another. I don't think it's necessarily a causal thing. But I think those kind of policies you're describing, the nanny state sort of policies, are indicative of a tendency that then feeds into these other things. I mean, if you take the SNP, for a long time they've been trying to get bans on 2-for-1 pizzas, minimum pricing on alcohol. They're really, they tried that named person scheme where every Scottish child would have a state guardian, which I think is chilling. It didn't go through, thank God. But, these kind of attitudes. And now where are we? We're at Humza Yousaf, the Justice Secretary, shoehorning through this draconian hate speech bill, which criminalises speech in your own home, right? So one doesn't lead to the other, but one creates the conditions within which the other can flourish. Yeah, I mean, you're right that it's not necessarily the specific policies that will kind of give liberty to the next policies to do it. It's a lack of, it's not just the complacency, obviously, the lack of complaints, but also maybe the wrong type of complaints, but it's the issue of they believe that these policies, the intention is for the greater good or for security. For example, the early days of COVID days and lockdowns. A lot of people like me thought that this could actually, the beginning of lockdown, this could actually fuel libertarianism and people are going to become more libertarian. Actually, no, I was wrong. Because people want security over liberty. Yes. When they feel that there's a crisis. So, but there is a limit. For example, whether it's in Scotland or here, for example, the lockdown days, if there are specific policies that are so abnormal and nonsensical and the government or the people who are promoting it can't justify, then people will kick off. Yeah. A general first lockdowns, those sort of things, people will be like, okay, I understand the intention, I understand it's justified, I'll stay at home. But when you say a group of 6, people say, why not 5, why not 7? Yeah. And the same with Scotland, certain policies, they go too far that they can't even justify it for the greater good of security or kind of things like that. And people then, that's when people will rise up, for example, basically in terms of the narrative. But that also applies to some cultures. It's this culture, the Anglo-Saxon culture, the British culture, because from day one, we always resisted authority. And because of that, we didn't become revolutionary. Yeah. We created a kind of a convention between the state and the people so that the state, by default, don't go too far after Charles I. and people don't really go burning cars like the French every 10 minutes. Sure, that's the French reputation. Yeah. Although they haven't really been doing that all that much. Well, they did it 2 days ago again. Oh, right, okay. After the election. Yeah. Like, we lose elections, or we win elections. We have some nutters go in the protest outside Downing Street and shout and say, stop Brexit. But in France, in like revolutionary countries, in America, they go outside and actually burn cars and like go attack their bookstores. I'm like, why are you attacking books? Like, it makes no sense. But yeah, I suppose they had the Gilets jaunes, didn't they? Exactly. Yeah. Do you think that you have very sort of you have conservative values? You would say just generally. Do you think there's any sense in which your upbringing might have informed that as well? Insofar as I would say any kind of nation that has a theocratic basis is quite culturally conservative. It is quite interesting. For me, it's not fully that. I thought about this because if someone asked me, I say I'm a libertarian conservative, and they're like, what does that even mean? But I got my libertarianism from Iran because of that. Right. My conservatism actually was developed or created because of this culture, and it's very, very soft conservatism. You mean because of the British culture? Yeah, and if I were I had moved to like France or somewhere else, I can imagine it would have been something else. But I was always going to be right-wing, more right-leaning than left-leaning. I was never going to go towards socialism because socialism goes hand in hand with state control. Okay. And so I was never going to go with that. But I became more libertarian. Well, I'm basically more socially libertarian, economically free market, but culturally I'm conservative. So I value kind of flags and border and family values. So you are a nationalist, you would say? That's the thing. I'm trying to kind of come up with a better phrase. Nationalist, maybe. I don't know. But national libertarian. Oh, that sounds bad. But is it just that you're nervous about the connotations that term has? And I would like to fix it. Okay. There's nothing wrong with it. So that is an interesting point, though, isn't it? Is that, I mean, this was obviously something that was levelled against a lot of Brexit voters during the referendum. That the people who, well, they call them flag wavers or whatever.
Yep.
And if you have a sense in which a nation state is the best way in which to preserve democracy, which is actually kind of an old school left wing idea. Then for some reason that will tip over into jingoism, simply because there are some sort of fanatical. Xenophobic types who use the flag or appropriate the flag for racist ends.
Exactly. That's why, I mean, the combination, if you combine kind of the national conservative side and the more kind of libertarian side to ideology, it will prevent you from going to either side, because I disagree with most nationalists because they go too far towards tribalism and isolationism, and I also disagree with libertarians because they go way too far, too close to globalism and no borders and no flags. But if you actually have the basic soft nationalism, which is kind of just patriotism, respect your flags, look after your people first, but still libertarian and internationalist, so then we will do free trade, but we're not going to sell our sovereignty and national identity.
But then where do refugees fall into that? People fleeing war, asylum seekers, that kind of thing.
I mean, the concept of actual like wartime refugees, that has to be case by case and depending on the location. So now we live in a world where countries apparently work together under the United Nations, but they don't really actually work together. We can support camps near a region in a continent where people are running away.
Yes.
And the majority of people, look at Ukraine, look at Hong Kong. These are obviously kind of more kind of recent, but even long-term ones, Iran. The people who left these countries, if you ask them, if you interview them, the majority of them say they want to go back when the time's right.
Yes.
So they are the genuine refugees who still actually appreciate their countries. So we can actually always support these people. And but it has to be case by case. You should not really put any guilt on any nation or culture. Say, hey, America, you haven't taken enough, Ukrainians or Syrians, or it shouldn't be like this. We could still actually help with priority, which is just make them be safe somewhere, in a camp or something, and then we can see what we can actually do with all the neighboring countries.
Because a lot of the time, any debate about immigration or anyone who has reservations is branded racist or whatever automatically. I mean, I think there is a great tradition in this country of helping people in need. And your family has obviously benefited from that as well. So you're fully aware more than anyone of this. But that is important, isn't it? That we find a way that, and perhaps to alleviate people's concerns, we make distinctions between purely economic migrants and those who are genuinely in need and desperate.
Exactly. People have to be honest about the main difference between economic migration and actual kind of political refugees or asylum seekers is that the countries that take in economic migrants, they have to admit that they are selfish. They're doing it for them. You take in economic migrants, the talent, and the people who want to come here to actually work because it's good for you. And then that's when...
Well, it is. I mean, the NHS wouldn't survive without...
Exactly. But then the problem is, then you have a lot of people in your country who are still feel left out or kind of still need help, and then they feel they can sense that the government and the culture is bringing these people because they've basically been selfish. That it's helping the economy, fine, but what about me? Help me first and then them. So I get that argument. But when it comes to actual political refugees, genuine asylum seekers. Majority of people actually are quite sympathetic, including the majority of almost all Brexiteers. And everybody who voted against the European Union, everybody was very fine with the Hong Kong policy, saying, we're fine if they come here, because they knew that the majority are not going to come here anyway, and they didn't. And they knew that they also are closer, they have closer links to the United Kingdom because of the Commonwealth in those days. People have this basic kind of human instincts of fearing anything new or the concept of alien, because we are tribal. There's nothing wrong with it. People call it, by default you're racist. It's not. It's the same reason that when I was campaigning as a political activist and a candidate in East London, in Canning Town, kind of working class, there was a bit where kind of proper like a East End sort of area, and we had a chat, and they said we're not like against foreigners or people coming here. We're against them because we're against anybody who is basically not from this area, including a white posh boy from Chelsea. We'll basically be opposing that as well. So it's not about skin color. It's not about that sort of things. There's a lot of people who want to protect their tribes. Your tribe could be You and your partner, your family, your home with a door and windows, and then your neighborhood and your towns. And if the establishment understand that you have to have a balance between respecting that tribe, but also trying to become more kind of open and kind of outward looking slowly, and then you could have a perfect country.
When you were campaigning, was that for the Conservative Party?
At the time, yes, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
You say at the time quite rapidly, which makes me think that maybe you're a bit more disillusioned with them now. Would that be a fair?
Yeah. I'm not a Tory anymore. Not necessarily just because, of course, I can't really see myself as being a Tory because of the disagreements, but also I'm no longer a party political person because of what I've been doing made me more open.
And independent.
Yeah, independent.
What would you say that the Tory Party needs to do to sort of win your approval back?
Go through destruction and build from scratch. No,
that is pessimistic. I mean, if we go back right to Brexit, I mean, there was the Tory Party that were pushing for Remain.
Yeah.
David Cameron very much urging that.
Yeah.
So is that where this disillusionment starts?
No. It was always there, and I think I was just basically ignoring it because I was inside the party and I was basically doing something. You can't really have faith fully in the Tory Party as a voter even, but you can't fully lose that faith because the history of the Tory Party is that, as the majority of people know, that it exists to survive and exercise power.
Yes.
And but they have a set of values. It's not an ideological party. It believes in a set of values, basic values, of basically protecting the United Kingdom and all that stuff. Fine, and basic conservatism. They still have that, but it has to be pushed to do things. So whether it was the days of when it was a protectionist party, anti-trade, and it was the likes of Robert Peel and these guys and Gladstone's that pushed the party to become pro-free trade, and will move from being party of church and the whole Irish kind of situation. It always changed based on which side was pushing harder. Right now, and until recently, you had UKIP, Nigel Farage and the Brexit Party and the whole Brexit, short term, based on one project, pushed the party to go towards more freedom. But since then, it's been pushed by the left, centre left. And so people say that the Labour Party is a weak opposition. Yeah, but it's also the only, the strongest opposition that exists, that is as a pressure group that's pushing the Tory Party to behave. So by default, the Tory Party will always have to kind of compete. See the Tory Party as that kind of child that, wants to just basically if you say, don't touch this, I want to touch it. Okay. So if Starmer says, I want lockdown, Boris would say, I want more lockdown. If Starmer says high taxes, I say, I want more high taxes. If Nigel Farage comes and says, leave the European Union, then slowly, it took some time, but the Tory Party will grow and say, yes, now I want to leave.
But that sounds like, to me, like a party that doesn't have any core values at all.
Yeah.
And is just chasing votes and adapting itself in order to compete better.
It's a social club with access to power, basically.
So by your analysis, I mean, that doesn't sound like a party I would vote for either. I've never voted Tory myself. But I that doesn't sound convincing to me.
No, and ideally you want the whole system to be different, the political system and the whole structure. But this is what we have now. I mean, right now, if you put a gun to my head and say you have between red and blue and the other nonsensical parties and the other colours, by default I'm going to have to vote Tory again, and that's the problem.
Yeah.
But we don't want to again give them the complacency. That's the problem.
But there are some issues with the Tory Party that I particularly have, and one of them is their attitude to free speech, which I think is very bad. I mean, the Labour's has been awful for a long time. Corbyn was very hostile about press freedom. I mean, I remember him and bear in mind, I voted for Corbyn in 2017. He explicitly said...
How drunk were you?
I do regret that. He said explicitly that if he came to power, he would really clamp down on the press.
Yeah.
I went to one of Corbyn's press drinks events, and you could tell how much he hated them. I mean, the hostility was just palpable. But I don't think the Tories are any better, really. I mean, their online safety bill, I think, is absolutely disastrous for free speech.
Yeah.
And I would expect them, of all people, to have a real issue with that and to sort of just curb this a little bit, but they're not.
The difference is, someone like Jeremy Corbyn, he would do those things ideologically. He knows exactly why he's doing it. That's his just core values. That I need to clamp down on the press because they're criticizing my ideology. Fine, but the Tories do it again in a more they're kind of vacant in that sense, and they're doing it because of what I said, that they go with the wave, whichever wave is kind of hitting harder. Right now, when it comes to the online safety bill or anything, just internet and safety, just all that stuff. Yes, you have some of us who are outspoken. We go on TV, we go on YouTube, we tweet about it. But the establishment, who are actually quite out of touch in Whitehall, they can smell something else. They think that the mood in the country, they want more internet security. And so they say, okay, they don't even think that is this ideologically a sound kind of argument. They just, by default, it's like autopilot, like robots who don't do the online safety bill. And that's a big issue because they think that's what people want.
But they leap to it, don't they? I mean, with the horrific murder of David Amos.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, we had all these conversations about online trolls, which had absolutely nothing to do with it.
That's also just because they are politicians, and it's disgusting that they just take opportunities and anything that happens, they use it all the time, and it goes towards all of them, all parties, and that's a big issue that we're dealing with.
Is it just a misinterpretation of the public mood, insofar as they're seeing people who are concerned about the fact that children can access all sorts of things online? They're seeing the effects of online abuse, the psychological effects, and all of that is real and true.
Yep.
And that they assume, therefore, that, well, we need more online censorship. And actually, the two don't equate at all.
It's because politicians also, and the political class, they are very, very awkward when it comes to emotions and things that are sensitive. So by default, it's also a very British thing, that by default, any topic that involves any sort of emotion, they go towards, let's just basically do anything to not basically provoke them even more. That comes with hate speech laws, same thing.
Yeah.
And the whole issue with all the debates that we're dealing with from the trans lobby and everything else, it's that fear, it's just so hardwired that they just don't want to offend just even small chunk of society, because they know that small chunk of society will write Daily Mirror articles, The Guardian articles, and they will just kick off. And Owen Jones will go on TV and cry again. So they have to kind of just be so careful. Well, they think they have to be careful. So every sort of these policies, whether it's the online safety bill, because they think that the people out there are stupid. They don't know much about the internet. So they think that, well, if someone's daughter was basically bullied online, if I then don't do the online safety bill, if I do the exact opposite of it, or deregulation, then that person, that dad is going to be so offended, he's going to start a campaign group and he's going to start campaigning for Keir Starmer. Okay. And that could happen, of course. But you can't just bow down because of that.
Well, I would like to think more people would be offended by the restrictions on their liberties, on their basic rights to free speech and free expression, I would have thought.
You would have thought, but no, because like the whole concept of lockdowns, when things are relatively well and safe and secure in a country like the West right now, we take things for granted, including democracies. Look at the voting turnout, even in France. You would expect in other countries, in like a lot of countries in Africa who actually now do elections, you get 80%, like 85% of turnout.
Yeah.
The ones that are not fully rigged, obviously. But we don't really care much because we just don't feel that kind of fear, and that's what I'm trying to do with my work, to kind of wake people up, but without creating that kind of project fear. I'm trying to tell people, guys, trust me, I know how it could be. When I grew up in Iran and like those sort of cultures, the moment you lose it, your freedoms and all these things, then you know. So try not to reach that point. Wake up before.
Where does this place you when it comes to, for instance, the protest bill, the police crime and sentencing bill, where the government is sort of saying, look, if a protest is too noisy, the police have the ability to arbitrarily shut it down. I mean, that strikes me, and I've seen a lot of people on the right think that's a good thing, think the bill is a good thing, because they're sick of people like Insulate Britain and Extinction Rebellion. But I think that's quite myopic, because you're looking at it, you're looking at it in relation to groups that you particularly don't like.
Yes.
And you don't see how that legislation then expands and encapsulates people that you do. I mean, for instance, if you take the public order bill, I mean, that was rushed through. Labour were pushing for this after the Battle of Cable Street. Let's establish these laws that prevent fascists from marching through and causing these problems. And those laws, almost exclusively, have been used against left-wing movements ever since.
Yeah, because
it was the left that pushed them through.
The tendency of the basic authoritarianism, it could be accidentally supported by both sides at times.
Yeah.
So right now, Insular Britain, if they block the roads, the right will complain, and the left say, no, it's their liberty. If tomorrow, I don't know what sort of protest we could have now, because lockdown's gone now, but like hypothetically, if there was a right-wing protest group blocking the roads, the right will actually justify it, and then it will be the left saying, oh no, they're blocking the roads, like basically arrest them all. And, and that's why, by default, hardwired, the establishment end up doing authoritarian policies. Not that they know that it will be supported by both sides. Hardwired, they know. They have a feeling that there's enough support to get the bill.
Is that hypocrisy something you see on the right? I mean, I think it was the same with the Canadian trucker protest. They were not treated in the same way by the right as the Extinction Rebellion or Insulate Britain protests. But the principle is identical.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And the issue goes to any sort of action that you can see hypocrisy from both sides, including speech. I've made some jokes on YouTube. Some of my kind of more kind of right-wing viewers and subscribers have kind of criticized me, saying, "Oh, don't say that." I'm like, "Well, let me say it. It's just a joke."
Yeah.
But again, if the left says that, they will say, "Oh, see, you're just being offended." But the right also become snowflakes sometimes. Like they become like they melt down badly. But it's a very specific type of right. It's not a stereotype. All right wingers or all left wingers, of course. At this point, it's kind of like it's that anger, that new wave of anti-establishment that comes from both left and right. So your Corbyn side, and now you have the, I don't know, for example, in France, the Le Pen side.
Yeah.
Some of them from both groups do the same because they both have the same enemy, the establishment. The whole kind of the globalist elite. They're both fighting the same thing. But they have obviously two different solutions, and that's why they keep clashing.
I mean, so much now. I mean, I've spoken on this podcast to a number of people about this, but increasingly it's feeling less like a battle of left versus right and a bit more about liberty versus authority. And that seems to be, that has played out to come back to Elon Musk. The way in which the reactions on Twitter seem to have very simplistically divided into left-wing people are upset about Elon Musk and right-wing people are thrilled with Elon Musk. I think that's massively simplistic.
Oh, of course, yeah. There's a lot of people on the left, or the so-called far left. The likes of Ash Sarkar and these guys, actually, they are less woke. I mean, there are some certain topics, like even like Novara Media and Ash Sarkar, like they could be kind of woke-y about, so like they like racial stuff. But generally speaking, the actual left, they're not really that kind of progressive. It's the liberal side. It's basically the kind of the more kind of globalist establishment, kind of the elitist metropolitan side. That's kind of the big issue. It's not about left or right anymore. But
that's interesting with Novara Media, because occasionally I see them really playing identity politics.
Oh yeah,
and really going down. They go down the culture war route.
Oh yeah,
and then deny and say no, but we're all about about the economy and about class.
Exactly.
But they're not really. They are sometimes.
But that's just gimmicky. It's a business tactic to kind of get more attention. Obviously, they're deep down. They will be more Marxist. There will be more. Oh, we shouldn't really care about the woke stuff. But I know why they think they should and why they do, because they still need the support of more people from the left. So they have to pander to all these groups. They're kind of the endangered groups, I guess.
Do you think that Elon Musk buying Twitter is going to solve some of the problems that we've seen with online censorship?
Well, not necessarily online censorship. It's actually going to probably short term, and by short term I'm talking about the next 5 years, open the door to more chaos throughout the whole internet. But that's a good thing. Why? Because there will be backlash. So yes, he might potentially sort out most things with Twitter. And he can't really, there will be like miracle sort of thing. The Twitter won't be completely fixed in that sense.
No, but what he could do is just draw up
culture.
He could draw up a coherent terms of service that says you will be banned if you say something racist. You will be banned if you say this.
Exactly.
He might say it's okay to state biological facts and you're not going to have your account ditched. He might implement a new appeals process so that you actually get the reason why you're being kicked off. All of these things are actually doable.
Exactly, and it's a great thing that has happened. But when I say it's going to open the door to chaos, at least for a while, the backlash is that you're going to have some other people from Silicon Valley then either creating new platforms, successful platforms, because they'll push for it, or semi-successful at least. They have enough people to have users, or make existing platforms that we currently have, make them even worse. Okay. Your Instagrams and your Facebooks and these sort of things. And then there will be a bit of an awkward situation. My guess is the culture wars will now go completely online, because culture wars over the last like 5 years, 6, 7 years was fought online, but it was still in real life. But it was actually used the platforms to actually fight the culture wars. But now the culture wars will be about the online world, for on the online world. And it's going to be quite interesting to see what's going to happen post Twitter. All these guys who are leaving Twitter, they're going to do something with their life, right?
Yeah.
All the employees are going to kick off and go on strike.
Well, it's fascinating. I've seen tweets about the reaction within Twitter, and some of the members of staff are having a meltdown, and they are saying they don't know if they can work for this evil Musk, and people talk about how this is the equivalent of the rise of the Third Reich, and they're not joking. They
mean it. Yeah, they think it.
And some of them are quite prominent commentators and politicians and comedians and people like that. And Kathy Griffin talking about how Elon Musk is a white supremacist and just throwing out libel as though it's not libel. And, but this stuff is, I see it as a genuine hysteria. I look at this and think adults shouldn't behave this way.
No.
Is it just that the internet infantilizes us, just makes us stupid?
The internet actually has some sort of factor when it comes to giving us that kind of beer goggle, the bravery in the moment, the whole concept of keyboard warriors. And we all have it at times. Like I've seen me do it sometimes. I've seen you do it sometimes. Like very soft way on Twitter. That even
I'm quite gentle on Twitter.
I know, but sometimes I said sassy kind of like comments and like very very subtle. That we will be more polite, and I would say you're lovely. But a lot of other people that would just not even bother do even a passive aggressive sort of argument in real life. Yeah, it does give us that bravery, but that means that sometimes some people then it escalates. But it's not the fault of the online world, it's the fault of the people. So don't blame the internet or the platform, blame the actual individual. There was this guy, forgot the name, I'm guessing he's in America, some sort of PhD guy, like a classic educated liberal, tweeted this morning or last night about how can you really think that someone with no proper master's degree, university education like Elon Musk should be in charge of something like this?
Yeah, I saw that.
I mean, the whole thing is wrong. But they think they mean it. They're not doing it to provoke. That guy is genuinely out of touch. Genuinely thinks that Elon Musk is an idiot. Have you not seen the success of his businesses?
So, I mean, not blaming, I get the point. Don't blame the platform. What you're saying is there is a degree of personal responsibility. This is a very conservative value, of course, that actually we have to take responsibility for our own actions, even on the internet.
Well, the internet is exposing the strength and the flaws of humanity,
right?
More than before. It's just a mirror held at the people themselves. That's all it is.
Well, this is like when Ricky Gervais says that it's like the scrawling on a toilet wall. You couldn't see it before, but Twitter just allows you to see it.
Exactly. So it's not and that's why I've been to like party conferences where politicians and members sit down, have these like really boring meetings and discussion tables about a couple of them I remember, which is about the online world and safety and these sort of things. And I just listened, and it was about this, and it was about the emotion side and how, if someone basically says something offensive, someone will get offended, something like that. And I said, but we've been doing this for centuries and decades, on the streets, in the toilet, on the wall, and anywhere with graffitis, and we've been doing it already. But you haven't stopped them because you can't stop people. Okay. You can't go arrest every single person who says the F word.
But isn't there a case to be made that I take your point that human behaviour doesn't really change, and it has been this case across history. But isn't there a case to be made that the kind of degraded infantile discourse that Twitter thrives on, that actually Twitter rewards, insofar as things get shared more if they're a bit more blunt, right?
Yep.
If they're a bit more extreme.
Yep.
That kind of discourse seems to have migrated quite effortlessly over into Parliament, say, or mainstream commentators, or these kind of things. I think if you go back, if you read old opinion columns from, 40 years ago, you don't see this kind of mudslinging.
Yes.
You don't see commentators deciding what their opponents secretly think and assuming the worst of everyone. There was a sense in which you could have an argument in a civilized way, right? And I think there is evidence that the rise of social media has had an effect.
Yes, so you're absolutely right. I said it kind of exposed the human flaw, but it also magnified it. You're right. But at the same time, it's not the internet or social media or access to information that created this problem. It was the people that created it to create the problem. We created it because there was always an appetite for this, unintentionally, of course. There was the move towards the late 20th century, post 80s and 90s, and you had the good days again. Everyone was like basically friendly. You had the Cold War over, and the Reagan days and Thatcher days over, and everything was safe. Like you had your Clintons and Blairs and Majors. Everyone was like friendly and like nice. that created the millennials.
Yeah.
That created, we're now bored. So some of them did some good stuff. They created your Facebooks and all that. And then some of them became, humans want to do things, we get bored, including anger, including we just want to be angry at something. We want to create problems, including the people I was growing up with in London and Luton. They were complaining about things even though they didn't have to complain about.
Yeah.
We created this problem because it was always going to happen. If it wasn't Twitter, we are always going to be going towards this culture of shouty. Well, I miss the days of the 80s and 70s when you had talk shows like this, where they're still on YouTube if people want to go and watch the interviews with the Milton Friedman, with Ayn Rand, where the presenter might have been on the other side of the political spectrum, but they had like a 2-hour
That's what
chat.
I mean. It's exactly
nice
that.
and quiet. And now it's boring, apparently. Now it's dull. But it shouldn't be, right?
But that's precisely what I mean. It's those sort of debates and discussions.
I mean,
even things like the muggeridge discussion about Life of Brian, and Palin and Cleese are there, and the bishops sitting opposite, and it's not angry and tearing each other apart. It's a sometimes caustic, sometimes adult, funny discussion, but it's there's a mutual respect, even though there's a fundamental disagreement.
Yeah,
and that I would love to restore.
Yeah, but that was what was respected by that generation, and then the newer generation was seeing them as, oh, you guys are the boring ones. Oh, now I'm bored. I want to shout, basically. So when I say that this culture was always created even before your Twitters, was Question Time. BBC Question Time was created way before that. Things like that was way before this social media platforms. They were already creating the shouty arguments and all those sort of things. And they were already creating your Jeremy Paxman interviews where it was like 2-minute interview. You don't even get enough time for the minister or the politician to actually answer questions. So
exactly. You were trying to catch them out.
Yeah, so it was already being created. The Twitters were already being created. This culture of keyboard warrior, shouty, going with your kind of yellow vest and, the truckers and, the Corbynistas and everybody being more kind of out there and outspoken was already a wave that started about 20 years ago.
So do you see the current culture war, what we call the culture war, as being sort of a natural progression from what we've already seen?
Yeah, and it was basically always going to happen. And my view is it's kind of needed. It's best for the West.
Okay. What do you mean by that?
It's best to kind of, some people on the left and the liberal side see it as a dangerous thing, that you open the door to chaos and now we're going to go towards Hitler. And my view is because we opened the door to chaos is why we're not going to go towards Hitler. For example, Trump being elected in 2016, that 4 years, from day one, the liberal side was saying, because we elected him, because we gave a voice to the nutters and the deplorables, you're now going to create Hitlerism. But in fact, put aside, of course, people could have like different arguments about, we could have debates about the 6th of January in Charlottesville, things like that, the mismanagement in terms of the wording and communication from Trump as president, fine.
Yes.
But throughout the whole 4 years, my view is, not that whether he planned it or it was kind of unintentional, subconsciously, he contained the crazy because he actually allowed the dialogue to happen because we were shutting it down. If you put a lid on it for such a long time, like the 90s and 2000s with Blair and these guys, then Brexit happened. And if you hadn't actually allowed Brexit votes or Trump to actually happen, then you could actually have actual chaos. So it's a good thing
I think that's right, that had the Brexit vote been thwarted, which is what so many in Parliament explicitly wanted to do. Nick Clegg wrote a book about how to stop Brexit. This is an explicitly anti-democratic movement.
Yeah.
If that had succeeded, I think the powder keg would have been lit.
Then chaos
in quite a really unpleasant way, I think.
Then, that's when actual chaos will happen. Or if they hadn't even given the permission to have the referendum. Basically change their mind. Cameron saying, "Oh, I changed my mind now." Same thing would have happened. Right now, you allow the energy and even the anger to be released, and it's a good thing. You're containing chaos.
But the Trump thing as well.
Yeah.
I would argue that Trump's presidency did actually escalate the culture wars in some ways, because he wasn't very good at lowering the temperature.
No,
when it came to these debates.
Well, true, I agree, but that goes back to what I said, that it was basically kind of like needed. We have to go through this shouty period to avoid a long-term, Mussolini's and or Soviet Union days.
I suppose, certainly with the 6th of January, it's quite clear that the Democrats had to engage in historical revisionism to make that fit this template of the rise of a fascist dictator. Because, all of a sudden they were saying, Nancy Pelosi saying about 6th of January was the same as Pearl Harbor or the same as 9/11. Well, everyone can see that's not true.
Yeah.
Everyone can see it's a few idiots in horns.
Yeah.
trespassing, and and not to undermine the injuries and the death and that kind of thing.
Yeah, but still,
but it's not the same.
Yeah, absolutely not.
As a terrorist attack in which 3,000 people are murdered.
And these things had to happen for your Nancy Pelosi to say those sort of things, for us to then expose them. And we might think that, oh, Nancy Pelosi still doesn't understand it, or this one Nick Clegg still doesn't understand Brexit. You might say that, but deep down, they understand it more than if it hadn't happened. So if you had actually allowed the establishment, the centrist kind of globalist establishment to keep being in power for decades, then they wouldn't even have that experience things like this. So they would have always had this caricature of anyone who disagrees with me is going to be a crazy bomb villain, basically.
Well, I've seen, I lost friends over Brexit, but then I've seen a number of people recently, and I think there's a general view among particularly the Remain contingent that people went a bit mad, and that they accept that they went a bit mad. And that those reactions in the first few weeks after the vote were so insane, so unhinged. Anyone who voted Leave is evil. Unfollowing, blocking. This civil war, effectively. I think a lot of people now accept that they reacted in a childish way.
On the Remain side,
yeah, I think a lot of people do.
I think so, and that's why they lost the support towards the end, in terms of the street protests and things like that.
Yeah.
Because when the vote happened, a lot of people were saying, basically, they were implying that the Brexiteers were waking up the next day, 24th of June 2016. Oh, I am now racist. This feels interesting. Nobody woke up racist. Nobody woke up because of Brexit saying, oh, I now feel empowered to go out there and punch someone. Nobody did that. In fact, Brexiteers stopped everything because they won the vote. It was the Remainers who kept protesting. And then Brexiteers came out when Parliament was trying to stop the actual Brexit. And otherwise, you already contained the so-called crazy on the right, the Brexit side, by giving them the actual referendum.
But again, it came down to mischaracterizations. One of the biggest narratives that I heard in the media all the time was that the Brexit vote was swung because we live in a country of people who want blue passports, who want to stop all immigration, who hate immigrants, who hate foreigners, and who want empire back. That was the big one. Vince Cable stood up and said, this is just about nostalgia for empire.
Right.
Keep hearing this nostalgia for empire thing. And yet I've never met anyone who has a nostalgia for empire. I don't actually think that's a thing. I think there might be one or two nutcases here and there, but that's just, it was just fabricated. There was no evidence for it, and it was taken as being the key decision-making factor here.
Yeah, so since the actual vote a few years ago now, it's been ages. It still feels like yesterday.
It does, doesn't it? Because it still lingers.
I it goes back. I spend a lot of time in these debates defending that, saying, no, it's caricature, and the majority obviously didn't want it for that reason, or they don't think that, they were in empire, or things like that, or the blue passport. Then I'll stop actually talking about that because I realize, you know what, I could double down. I'm going to double down, and I'm actually going to translate what they mean. And they are right. When they say, or when you think they say they want empire back, they want Britain as soft global power back.
That's not the same as empire.
No, but they think that's what they mean. But what people actually want something. What they want is Britain to be a strong country, not to run the world, but to actually just stand up for yourself.
But that's so different.
It's very different. Exactly.
A country that has sovereignty, that doesn't outsource its decision-making capabilities to a foreign nation. That's not the same as wanting an empire.
Or wanting to conquer, exactly.
But it's not even comparable.
No, exactly. And that's what they don't get. Because for them, for the certain liberal side and who voted Remain or still campaigning for Remain and rejoining, they think it's either being a globalism and the kind of human cooperation Star Trek world, or anything that's not that is empire conquering the world. But there's a third one, which is we want soft, global, strong Britain so that we could actually stand up for ourselves, not to shut our doors to anybody and not to conquer the world. It's just to have respect because everyone wants to be proud of their tribe. Your family, your flag.
So this comes back to what you were saying before.
It's about the tribe, and people want the tribe of Britain to become strong again for themselves, so that they could feel more proud and patriotic. And that's all we wanted. The blue passport is a good example. It's all symbolic. The blue passport, the attitude towards it, it's not that even people were campaigning on the street saying, I'm waiting for the blue passport.
No, I saw more of that insofar as I saw some editorials saying the Sun and that kind of thing, people saying it's great, we're getting the blue passport back. What I didn't see, though, is people voting in order to get the blue passport. But that wasn't that wasn't the thing that swung it.
No, it was a symbolic thing, and it goes all in the same package of they just wanted to make their tribe stronger again, so they could be proud of their neighborhood, which is called the United Kingdom. And everything goes back to tribalism for humanity.
So let's just talk a little bit about America, because you've taken an interest in American politics and where it's going. And you say that the Trump presidency was a necessary, almost release valve, that kind of thing. But what happens if he gets in again? Is it likely? And how will that look very different from, or will it look different from what we saw before? And what could the implication be for the culture wars?
That's interesting. I mean, if he plays his cards right, he could actually run it differently. My theory and kind of view, again, it's a very complicated whole journey and the two elections, but 2016 he ran as the kind of the underdog anti-establishment. I'm kind of fighting on your behalf.
But that changes when you've been president, right?
Exactly. So the 2020 campaign was keep America great, and that was not a Trumpian thing. It's an establishment thing. So it was not as convincing, of course.
Okay.
Whether we could talk about the other aspects of the whole election and, all the Biden stuff, but that, again, wasn't really him. So this time, if he actually gets a nomination and everything else, and the GOP actually, Republicans were like, we're now behind Trump again. If he runs it the way I want him to run, which is a combination of statesman / activist, saying, hey, I'm your president, I just went on holiday, I'm back now. Don't be too. I'm completely the leader, and I'm just vote for me again. But also, don't go too activist, too 2016. You don't need that anymore.
Yeah, but he does. I mean, even in what he's been saying so far, he keeps talking about the rigged election, right?
Oh yeah, he's not going to stop that.
But whatever people think about that, it looks petulant.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's why...
I don't think strategically it's a good idea, is what I'm saying.
No, Ben Shapiro actually said that on his show quite recently about, because I think he's getting closer to DeSantis from Florida to actually stand. He's saying the mistake that Trump might be making for America is that he might make the next election about, if he runs, it will be about him and the return of Trump.
He tends to make things about him,
whereas
though, right?
the election should be a referendum on Biden.
Well, this will be the king thing, won't it? Because, I mean, last time, Biden won because he wasn't Trump. I mean, he just hid away. He didn't have to do much. He relied on the strength of feeling against the incumbent president.
Yeah.
So this time it feels like it could be the other way around, insofar as Biden has not been a success by any standards. And a lot of Democrats are very disillusioned with Biden. Yeah. And that could be the thing that swings it for the Republicans this time, is, again, fighting against what you don't want the president to be.
Exactly. I mean, just like 2020 was a vote, against Trump. It wasn't like for Biden. This time, Trump just did an interview on a channel, and he was basically saying that when he was asked, can you beat Biden? He said anyone could beat Biden. Yeah. And that goes back to, yeah, he's right, but can he understand that if that's going to happen anyway, then make the election about a referendum on Biden rather than on yourself again.
Do you want it to be Trump, though, or would you rather the Republicans found a different candidate?
If DeSantis could actually impress me more, then yeah. Otherwise, I still would probably want Trump back. I could say it as an outside, as a non-American, because I could just sit here and just watch the chaos.
Of course.
I would struggle in America between the two sides and on a partisan level.
In terms of who to vote for?
Or just generally speaking, on everyday life, red and blue. I don't think I could be full Republican or Democrat because I'm more libertarian, but I'm still more Republican, of course.
Yeah.
But Trump, I think, is still needed. They still have to go through that phase. They still need to finish the phase. Just finish the wave, and then
I don't know.
it's a risk, but the Republicans also, because Republicans need to basically sort out their party, and they can only do it if they finish Trumpian phase.
And what about in this country? I mean, is it the case that, to my mind, Labour just isn't a credible opposition at the moment? I mean, I know Partygate has really caused a lot of trouble for Boris and for the Tories generally. But I don't think it's enough. I think Starmer might be the problem here.
Oh yeah, and Labour also have to go through Starmer. He has to stay and stand in the next election and lose,
which he will.
If they get rid of him now, it's the worst thing for Labour, because he is the transition between Corbynism and the next Labour. I was going to say new Labour, but the next Labour.
What does that have to be, though? What does that have to look like?
I think there has to be an element of, they need to pick a side. The Labour Party have now changed. They're no longer that party of the Atlees. They're party of your trade union working class sort of side, who then became the UKIP voters and the Brexit and the Tory
they're
voters.
not the party of the working class anymore. That's pretty much clear.
So then pick a side. Go liberal metropolitan, like the Democrats, go that way, it's a risk. They're going to lose.
Yeah.
but they have to pick a side. They can't. The longer they go, I'm going to get the Hackney votes and Islington votes, as well as Hull and, you know, those areas and kind of Peterborough. You can't. You can't do that. The only way you can do it if you're the Tory Party, specific to the Tory Party, because it doesn't stand for anything, they can pander to the shires as well as the middle classes in cities.
But wouldn't it be refreshing to have an actual opposition, as in an authentic left-wing movement within Parliament? Wouldn't that be? It would give the electorate a choice. It would be, you know.
I mean, it would be lovely, but the current Tory Party is a creation of the Labour Party. They've already made the Tory Party the left-wing party, about aspects of it. So you can't go left unless you go Corbyn left. You can't go left. What sort of left-wing party are you going to be? Because Starmer is trying to be left. He's saying, I'm going to raise taxes. And Rishi Sunak says, I'm raising taxes more. Like, the Starmer can't do anything. He says, I'm going to do lockdown. And Boris says, I'm doing lockdown 6 more months. And like, people made fun of Starmer. And I made fun of Starmer, saying, what are you offering since the lockdown days? We can't really blame him, because what was he going to do? Come out against lockdown?
No, I mean, Labour were pushing for even more restrictions.
I know, yeah. But that was not enough, because then Boris was already doing it.
Well, exactly. So will you never go into politics then? You never think about running?
No, in the words of Boris Johnson, I'd rather die in a ditch than go into politics then. Absolutely not.
Really?
Yeah.
And is that just because you can't ally yourself 100% with any party or any...
No, that's a spoiled argument. It's because I've actually come to understand that the real change and real influence is not really done inside the political bubble.
Right.
Politicians and governments don't really make the actual change, but they think they make the change, but it's not. It's your individuals, whether it's in terms of narrative, the culture. People like yourself, and hopefully me, maybe, we actually influence on a cultural level. People like Elon Musk and business people, they create products that save real life problems.
Yes.
They are the ones who solve the problems. We are the ones who are actually influencing the culture and society level. Politicians just do short-termism. They come up with plasters. They put a plaster on something. The next one, take it off, put a plaster somewhere else. So no, I'm not going to do politics.
And is that what you feel your vocation is behind, the driving motivation behind all you do with YouTube and that kind of thing? It's
propaganda.
Well, not necessarily propaganda, but I wasn't accusing you of that.
No.
But wanting to affect change, wanting to persuade other people of your point of view, is that where you're coming from?
Yes, absolutely. And I think my current mission is to fight for a new normal, a normality when it comes to ideologies, fix internationalism and nationalism, so that we stop this ultra globalist kind of movement towards Star Trek, and also stop an accidental isolationist nationalism. So we could actually have a national libertarian society. So I'm trying to basically influence both sides to kind of calm everybody down and give them some sort of hope. Every kind of media outlet and kind of generally speaking, the old school ones, the legacy ones, are all about doom and gloom and negativity. I'm trying to give some positivity.
Well, that's a lovely note to end on. Thank you, Mahyar, for joining me today.
Thank you very much. Yes.
This has been the Free Speech Nation podcast with me, Andrew Doyle, and my guest, the political YouTuber Mahyar Tousi. Do check out Mahyar's Twitter account, that's Mahyar Tousi, and also his YouTube videos as well. And if you enjoyed the show, please do like and subscribe, and join me next week. Farewell.